Okay, so here we have question 14, and this is from the SAT number 16. This is a QAS test, and let's jump in and solve it. So question 14 says, if true, which finding of a survey of the general population would most undermine the author's interpretation of, I'm not going to say this name here, this person's study. So we're looking for some kind of finding of a survey that would undermine here the author's interpretation. And so the way to solve this is going to be, let's go back first to the passage. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to look for basically what does the original study say, right? What is the original point? And then basically what we want to do is try to figure out on what foundation or what assumptions or what series of conclusions sort of form the foundation of the conclusion. And then we could decide, all right, based on that, what would be most likely to undermine that? So let's figure this out. So here is where Sonia's, or her first study is mentioned. And basically this whole paragraph here, the whole point of this paragraph is just giving the methodology of the experiment. And then, there's some of the results here that subjects experience higher levels of happiness, etc. But then we have this here. Interestingly though, students who spaced the kind acts out, performed them on different days, didn't experience the same happiness boost that the work suggests altruistic acts may need to be frequent. So her work suggests that altruistic acts may need to be frequent in order to confer a lasting change in well-being. So basically what this sentence here is saying, this is a perspective of the author, and basically what it's saying is that the work basically suggests that if you want to get the benefits of altruistic acts in terms of your well-being and in terms of your happiness, what you need to do is you need to have them be repeated multiple times a day or more than once a day at least, or they need to be frequent in order to get those long-term changes. So that's the best candidate, I would say, for the conclusion, the author's interpretation of the conclusion. So we would expect that if anything were to undermine that, then it would undermine the interpretation. So maybe if it was actually found out that you don't need to have you don't need altruistic acts to be frequent in order to confer a lasting change, then that would undermine the argument. So let's see if we can find an answer choice that's similar to that. So A says that the happiness boost associated with altruistic acts remains constant when more than 5 altruistic acts are performed in a single day. So this is basically saying if we did a survey and we found that you have a happiness boost if you do more than 5 altruistic acts a day, that's going to undermine the author's interpretation of the study, which would make sense because really the author's interpretation of the study presupposes that you need to have frequent, you need to have a relatively high frequency of altruistic acts to get this happiness boost. So more than 5 would probably be, would support the author's interpretation actually. So that's not a good answer choice here. B says that while all altruistic acts confer happiness boost, altruistic acts that lead to immediate benefits confer the greatest boost. So this is basically saying if we did a survey and we found that the altruistic acts that lead to immediate benefits, like right off the bat, you can see them, those are going to confer the greatest amount of happiness. If we found that would undermine the author's interpretation of the study. But that's actually not what we find. Or however, that's really not what the author talks about. Nowhere in the passage or in the author's interpretation of the study is a connection drawn between the immediate benefits, right? The immediacy of the benefits and the happiness that you get. Basically, if you do something and immediately you see the results or you see the benefits of it, then you're going to have more happiness. And because the passage doesn't talk about that and the author doesn't highlight that, that's not going to be a good answer choice. C says that the amount of happiness people feel as a result of performing altruistic acts increases with the efforts those acts require. So this is basically saying if we had a survey that showed that the more effort that you put into your altruistic acts, the more happiness that you're going to feel, then this would undermine the author's interpretation. But this really has nothing to do with the author's interpretation of the study, because the only thing that he says is that you need to have a high frequency of altruistic acts. He doesn't say anything about the effort that's needed, that's required. So for that reason, C is not a good answer choice, which is going to leave us with answer choice D, and let's see what D says. So D says, occasional altruistic acts result in long-lasting increases in the personal happiness of those who perform them. So this is saying if we did a survey And we found that if you just do some nice, good deeds every once in a while, you'll have long-lasting personal happiness that would undermine the author's interpretation. And that actually would make sense because the author basically makes the case that you need to have a high frequency, consistent, high frequency amounts of altruistic acts to have long-term happiness. So if a survey came and showed the opposite of that, that would definitely undermine his claim, which means we're going to choose answer choice D for question 14.